Good morning, crawlers. Welcome to our 35th day of the cushion crawl. It's Sunday, and 35 days means we just finished our fifth week. Um, Incredible, time flies, and this trip, this whole COVID-19 isolation period, it's really this wild journey that I feel is totally out of time. So I don't know for you guys if you feel similarly, but it's like 5 weeks and like or it could be like 3 days. It's just this wild moment. And I heard a funny thing, which is like George, there's only 3 days now of the week now. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
I love it. I love it.
Yesterday, because who knows what's going on Thursday.
Yeah.
Well, today I have the pleasure of introducing George Lewis. George is actually a new friend, and he was introduced to us by Alain Lager. And some of you will remember Alain was a gentleman in Costa Rica who talked about community and led a session a few weeks ago. And he thought George would be a great addition to this community and to this content. And then George and I have been talking and relating, and I love what he has to say. And he is a healer, a mystic, a teacher, and he has so many different things to share. Super fascinating, and I'm so happy to be able to have him. So, George, thank you for being part of this crawl.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's a real pleasure to come, get to know you and hopefully get to know more of your wonderful community. It's in times like this that we all are able to, go on this exploration and go off on a journey in some ways, in a way that we haven't done for a while. Because, up until this time, most of us, because of society and society's constraints, were forced just to continue in the old paradigm of hard work and very difficult to sort of get out of that sort of feedback loop. And now we're able, with this time at home, either on our own or with our own families, to really start to question the meaning of life. I feel a lot of the time in the past when I bring up sort of, philosophy and the meanings of life to people, people say, oh, yes, it's great, but they roll their eyes and say, oh, George, you're great, but you're a little too deep. It's a bit too intense for me. I don't quite want to do this now. And I think now we're all being, it's like an awakening. We're beginning to, all of us in our own unique way, open up to a different dialectic, a different language, and to dream into the possibilities of what humanity can do. I mean, this is such a big subject, and you've given me a free rein today to talk about whatever I want. Maybe I should start with a little bit of a background about me. So I have been a practicing artist for 20 plus years now. I studied politics and philosophy at university, but I didn't go into politics and philosophy. Actually, it was my father who refused to pay for my MA further education at Cambridge, so a stop came to that, and I ended up becoming a full-time artist. It has been a great journey, but in the last 5 or 6 years, I really have used my artistic interest to go into the healing arts. So I still paint water, and I love channeling through art, through visual art. But I really am very interested in frequency and vibration, and I've studied a lot as an astrologer. I've studied ancient Hellenistic astrology as well as modern astrology. I've had some great teachers. And I'm trying to sort of synthesize all these things so we can sort of better understand what it is to be human and where we're going. Because I think we're in this crisis at the moment because so many of us are waking up to realize that we've kind of lived in a world of an illusion. And we're all trying to break away from this illusion. And of course, breaking away from what we thought was reality is hard. It's painful. I love the allegory of the cave by Plato. I don't know whether you know or are familiar with, I know you are, Mike, but with you other people listening, with Plato's allegory of the cave. It's beautiful because it's a story of there are these human beings who are deep down in the cave where there's no light, and they're sitting up against a wall, their backs against the wall, and they're facing all one way, and they can't look up or down, but they're looking straight ahead. And there they are looking at opposite a screen, almost like a television screen, if you want to turn the analogy a bit more contemporary, but it's a big wall. And onto this screen is projected images from behind them. And these images become their reality. These images are what tells them what they think is truth. And eventually, after many years, Plato goes on that one man decides to escape, and he fortunately manages to climb slowly out of the cave and up into the light. And it's a gradual climb, and it's very frightening because he doesn't know what's out there. And of course, when he gets out into the light, he's blinded by the light, but he has this absolute epiphany that what was down there was just fake. It was propaganda. But he didn't know that until he saw the light, and it took him a while to adjust to the light, and it was painful. And then he went rushing down to the cave to tell his fellow compatriots, his prisoners, that he's found this amazing other reality. And they all laugh at him like a madman. They don't believe him. They say, "You're silly, you're a drunk, you're talking absolute nonsense. This is our reality. Look at the screen." And so he sadly leaves them and goes up, and then the parable sort of goes on. I think there's so much in this message. There's so much that we, all of us, me included, have kind of bought in to the illusion of the world from which we're emerging. And we need gentleness with this. We mustn't be angry. Mars can really come out very strong very quickly, because when we realize something's off, we go into shock first, and then we go into denial, and then frustration, and there's this sort of anger about, no, it's not right, because my ego tells me this is the truth, and it begins to be shattered. And then what happens? We become a little depressed. But this is good, because it's through the depression that eventually, you see, through the depression, we come up and we begin to experiment, and we begin to, like the child, like the Fool card, you see, in the tarot, just treat it symbolically. You don't have to take it literally. If you come from a specific religion, it's okay. But the Fool is the eternal child. And actually, it's interesting that the Fool today, Mike probably isn't even aware of this, but it's fascinating that you would ask me to speak today. Exactly at the chart today, the Fool, which is Uranus, 6 degrees Taurus, is conjunct the Sun, 6 degrees Taurus today. Isn't that lovely that we're speaking today about how we can journey into that mythic realm of the Fool, of the eternal child, to believe that actually there is a new way of being. I got goosebumps when I think about this, because it's hard for all of us. And we are all trying to emerge from the cave, and it's painful. So once we come through that depression, we experiment, as I said, and then there's an element of acceptance of a new reality, a new realm, a new sense of possibilities. And then we go up and we integrate this new system. You see, what we're doing now, my friends, is we are in a new Copernican revolution. And the astrology backs it up too, is this era, we're coming out of an old paradigm. It's different from the First World War. It's different from the Second World War. It's even different from the Industrial Revolution. This is bigger. I can privately share with you much data astrologically through what I call mundane astrology, which is global astrology, to back this up. Quickly, I'll give you two examples. The first example would be Pluto is in Capricorn now. Pluto, the planet of transformation. Think of Pluto in terms of Hades, where whatever he touches, it's never the same again. It's deep, subconscious, Jungian, shifting sands, change. Pluto, the planet of transformation, moved into Capricorn, the zodiac associated with business, with corporations, with large currencies, with governments, with institutions. In 2008, It moves out of Capricorn in 2024. Here is a big time of shifting energies away from Earth, Capricorn, into air, Aquarius. We've all heard of the age of Aquarius. We'll talk about that in a minute. Now, the last time Pluto was in Capricorn was the French Revolution and the American War of Independence from my country, Britain. Now, what did America do? Now, I may speak with a strange accent, but I am truly very American in my whole soul and philosophy. The Americans in the 1770s decided to fight a war against tyranny. They decided to stand up for the rights of human beings, to worship in the way that they saw was right for them, the individual choosing to worship, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech. These things which were very sacred. Europe did not do it. America led the world. I believe we're undergoing a second American Revolution. It's going to be different, but it's going to be based on updating these remarkable tenets, these ideas, these philosophies, and making them relevant for the 21st century. Now, Pluto moved into Capricorn in the 1770s and 1780s, and look what happened. That amazing experiment blossomed. And of course, over time, like all things, it became corrupted. And power slowly shifted towards corporations. It shifted away from humanity, more towards power behind the throne, as it were. Now we're going through our own second stage of Pluto in Capricorn. It feels tough at the moment. It feels fearful because we don't know what's coming out at the other end. But if we are able to believe that this is a big cyclical change, we're going to really benefit from it. So one of the things I wanted to talk about today is the immune system. So we all know that the immune system, yes, it can be supported with good food, good sleep, all these things that we are learning more and more is very important. But it also can be supported with good thinking. And good thinking, right brain, like right food, is a question of understanding what we're putting into our brain, because our thoughts become us. They go into the corporeal, they enter the body. And so one of the things which is important for me, and I always teach what I most need to learn. Now, I have a lot of fire, air, and water in my chart. I don't have very much earth. So I do a lot of healings with sound vibration, you see. Today, because Zoom doesn't really do very well with transmuting sound, but the whole point is when we listen to the right frequency and imbibe it into our corporeal system, it anchors us back to Gaia. It brings us closer to source. So we have to think about what fear is. And we're going to do some meditations at the end and some breath work. But I would posit that large aspects of mainstream media and what I would call the old paradigm, and also it's for all of you to make up your own minds what that is. You have to label those organizations, those institutions yourself. You have to come out of the cave. It's not for me to give the medicine. You know, truth cannot be told. It can only be discovered or learned. It's very important, Matt. I'm an Aries, so one of the things I really believe in, and Mike knows this already about me, is I believe in self-sovereignty. I believe in all of us making our own independent assessment of what's going on, because that's how the soul can be polished and that's how it grows. Yes, we're all part of something collective, absolutely. But when our intention is towards source, towards light, towards consciousness, we are able to look that other person in the eye and say, yes, that person is fulfilling their soul contract. Caroline Myss, the great medical intuitive, talks about the sacred contract. It's the same thing. My word, language is the soul contract. It doesn't matter. The point is we all become aligned individually, but within something collective. To me, that's very powerful. So we have to then understand what fear is, because normally there is a threat, like with COVID-19 or coronavirus, but normally it's exaggerated. And the reason it's exaggerated is because the old paradigm do wish for us to remain in the cave. And I don't think it's possible to argue against that. You see, to me, if we tread lightly, it's not political, because everyone wants to politicize everything today. We have to use our intuition and look carefully at what we're being told. And once we can start to decipher it intuitively using our brain and the facts, we can pull a little bit away from fear and then allow ourselves and our small communities, our friendships, our groups of people we interact with, to create some form of energetic bubble. And if we all do that on the individual micro basis, then society changes. I would argue that the age of Aquarius, in which we're moving into now, is going to be a flattening of the pyramid, where all these different micro communities can communicate digitally. It's very Aquarius, this, digitally, through the internet, but we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to find source. Now, for some people who are less familiar with spiritual language, I love the analogy of Star Wars. You see, instead of getting caught up in political language, which is a lower vibration, we have to think, are we trying to be in service of the light or the shadow? Now, the shadow is in all of us, okay? And in some ways, the greater the light, the greater the potential for shadow. Think of a candle. When it's light, there is always a shadow cast. But it's that sense of choice, free will. Do we choose Sith or Jedi? It's very real to me, that. Yes, it's symbolic. Yes, it's an allegory. But it's true for our own journey. And when we can choose actively, personally, individually, source, light, consciousness, then our vibration begins to change. And there are many ways for us, of course, to perfect this. I mean, I like music. I like to paint. But I think vibration, frequency is very, very, very key. And there are things which are beginning to come out now. It's still fringy about vibration and some of the ancient knowledge of vibration and frequency, past civilizations, and it's for everyone else to discover those things. But there's no question about it. With the immune system, when you use the right frequency, the right vibration with the immune system, which is all the chakras, the medium points of the body, from the crown down to the base chakra, disease, and in particular viruses, can't exist. And I want all of us to meditate on that, because when we start to have right brain, as in correct vision, understanding, we slow the reptilian brain down, and we create this sense of deeper cosmic understanding. We become less disconnected from source meaning either the planet Earth below us and around us, or the stars, the cosmic realm above us. One of the reasons why astrology is so important to me, it's archetypal, because the planets carry power. Now, of course, the ancients, maybe, some of them saw them as gods. I tend not to get so caught up in that semantic debate because it's ego-driven. Mike will have his own language of what that means to him. And if we venerate that because we see light in the intention, isn't that beautiful? As opposed to, no, my Mars is this, Mars means that, Venus means that. That's not helpful. Obviously, we want to get the archetypes right. You know, there's no question about it. Mars tends to be the warrior archetype. It's the red planet. It carries momentum. But the shadow of it is the death warrior destroyer. But the high vibration is the pioneer, the spiritual warrior. You know, so and whether we're masculine or feminine, and I happen to be a man in this body, in this life, but my Venus is just as powerful as my Mars. Same for you women, and the other way around. How do we activate the Mars archetype in ourselves so we can be warriors for truth, for enlightenment, for integrity, authenticity? And then Venus, how can we relate? How can we love? And Venus, of course, can love at many different levels. It doesn't just always have to be the erotic. So I'm kind of, going backwards and forwards here. I don't have a very strict, I'm talking just free today, but I want us to definitely think about, as we're all at home, a captive audience. This is the biggest leisure event in modern history. We're all at home together. It's kind of remarkable. And most of us who are wanting to become more awake are open to these conversations where, even if we were interested before, the run-of-the-mill of life and just paying the fees, I mean, money is still, in this paradigm as we come out of it, is still important, but it's going to change. We have to have faith in the system to evolve to suit us. And the more we pray, my friends, the more we pray together and individually, the more, I believe, the higher beings from the higher dimensions, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, come and intercede, come and help us. You see, our planet is, in my mind, going through a spiritual ascension. I believe it's going to become more apparent as we journey through these late stages of Pluto in Capricorn. We are going to have some form of ascension. All the great myths, all the great religions speak about this, from Nostradamus to the Christ to the Buddha, the mystics of Kabbalism, Gnosticism. Bhagavad Gita talks about it. I think we have this ability to leave the 3rd dimension and go to the 4th dimension and to ascend. Some maybe go to the 5th. That's not for me to say I'm a human being trying to figure it out myself. I'm just one of many light messengers who is on the journey. And maybe this is a time for me to share something else to do with that. I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound very reductive, but I think it's helpful to understand where we are as a spiritual beings on this planet, because we are all spiritual beings having a human experience. There is no difference between any of us in the sense that we're all spiritual beings. There is a difference in another respect. Some of us ignore the fact that we're spiritual beings. Some of us have put our head in the sand and, like in the cave, have followed a set of protocols, instructions, propaganda, whatever you want to call it. We all have. But some of us are more entrenched in that dimension. Every single one of you listening today, just by your being here, by you being part of Mike's world, are open, and many of you will be teachers, if not all of you, to helping civilization, your family members. We've all got soul contracts with people who aren't so awake as us, and that's always hard because they're brilliant in other ways, but we have to hold that space for their evolution. So there are 3 types of people, and this is again very reductive, but I think it helps get the ball over the net for us to understand where we're at. The first type would be like what I'd consider my teachers. They're very, very evolved spiritual souls. They haven't had a lot of power in the past paradigm because they've had to either be hidden or working in esoteric groups. But they're very evolved. They're open to many other realities, spiritual realities, esoteric realities, time travel, whatever it is. And they realize and have realized that the paradigm has not worked, probably for most of their life, or certainly for a large part of it. And then there's group 2, and I'm happy to put myself in group 2 here, that at some point in my life, even if I've always felt something was wrong, I was still slightly in the fog. I was still slightly in the cave, in the dream, not trying to balance the world, trying to fit in, juggle. And in the last 2, 4, 5 years, especially in the last 2 or 3 years for me, I've woken up a lot. And it's been very painful, of course, because people around me haven't woken up quite so much. So I've had to navigate that space. I would imagine many of us feel akin to that type of feeling. And we are like children, again, thinking of the fool. We have realized that many things that we've been told, not everything, but many things haven't really added up. There's been a bit of a lie, the confusion, and we're trying to rewrite what it is to be human again, and to release some of these older concepts of ego, of structures, and birth something new, like the decay of an old civilization and the birth of something new. And then there's the third group. And this is where it's very challenging, because we all know people, many people in this third group. The third group are the people, and there are two types of third group. The first are the people who want the old paradigm to continue because they're part of, quite frankly, that Sith, darker, lower vibration, okay? But then there's a group in the third group who have just bought the propaganda, the war, the cave, and they are stuck. Very sadly, one has to have radical compassion. They are very angry at the moment of anything new, any new reality. We have to have radical compassion for that, but at the same time, we can't spend too much energy helping those people until they've had their journey of the soul, the deep, dark night of the soul. It is like alcoholism or some form of addiction. They're going to have to go to rock bottom, as I said, shock, denial, frustration, depression. And then once they're in that depression, then, you know, the recovering alcoholic, we may be able to help. And I share that because it helps us in our own minds think about those people who are 3 but want to get into 2, you know. And so we're trying, all of us, to move towards the light. In some ways, you know, to me, there's no hierarchy. It's just a question as a spiritual being shining light. I mean, it's kind of interesting that I'm Aries Leo. It's because I really like light. I paint with light. I heal with light. And, you know, privately, I'm happy to talk to many of you about viruses and light therapies. Very fascinating. But I think light is very important symbolically and literally. And the idea of getting into the light, I mean, I love Apollo. I took a bunch of students to Delos, one of my favorite islands. It's opposite Mykonos in the Aegean, in the Greek Isles, last summer on a retreat, a meditation, spiritual retreat. And we did many prayers to Apollo. And of course, Apollo's got many different names. I mean, the ancient Egyptians called him Ra. But Apollo is great. And the sense of bringing the light in, because when we shine light, the darker things which hide, you see, they've got nowhere to go. And it is like a disease. You shine light on a virus, it kind of evaporates, actually. So, you know, I part of what I want to share with you today is try and think about the virus in terms of in terms of the bigger picture, not just literally the virus, but think of it in terms of how we can heal ourselves individually and as a species. You see, collective hysteria, which can be which is manufactured, don't forget. The collective hysteria is very deliberate, and it sort of, it allows the disease to go into the mind. So then our immune systems are impaired, and we lose our self-sovereignty. So we have to become aware of the illusion. When we awaken from it, we're free, you see. I so want us all to understand what freedom really is. I don't think as a species we have fully understood it. If we've kind of believed that we're free, but I promise you we're going to become much more free in this next round of civilization. You know, at the moment, the Sun and Uranus are 6 degrees Taurus, Mars is 18 degrees Aquarius, Saturn's 1 degrees Aquarius. We've had a lot of planets, and still Jupiter and Pluto and the South Node are all in Capricorn. We've had a lot of planets in Saturn-based signs and Capricorn, so it's very heavy, feeling very heavy with the Earth. But now, slowly, planets are moving away from Capricorn, and they're still going to be in Aquarius, but the Saturn is going to be releasing its grip. And the most important thing is we're moving away from an Earth-based reality. You see, in the last 200 plus years, Saturn and Jupiter, whenever they conjunct, and they conjunct every 20 years, they tend to conjunct, they've always conjunct in an Earth-based sign. Think of Earth, it's always about control, it's about power, it's about institutions, government, it's about hierarchy. You know, I have this card for you here today. Don't be alarmed, but in tarot, the devil is associated with Capricorn. But let me be clear, it doesn't mean Capricorn's a devil. At the high vibration, it's great hierarchy to protect. You see, the high vibration of Capricorn would be, I'm the CEO and I'm going to look after you all and care for you and treat you, but help heal you, because I'm going to teach you how to heal yourself. If you actually look, the chains around the man and woman are loose. They can escape the shackles, but they know not how. They're like in the cave. They've bought the propaganda, so they believe that they're enslaved, where actually they can lift the chains off. And we're coming out of a Capricorn-based society, which is, the hierarchies are beginning to go like that. And we're going to have micro, almost, I like Arthur, so I like the round table. I love the idea of a civilization pooling in different archetypes. So for me, because I'm very fire and air and water, I love to work with earth people. But a low vibration earth is the hardest for me, because low vibration earth is all about structure, rules, regulations, no. Where a high vibration earth is about a platform of nourishment. Literally think of Gaia, from which everything can germinate. You see, we have to allow it to operate at the high vibration. Let's take fire. The high vibration of fire, which is obviously plasma, is inspiration, it's charisma, it's creativity. But the low vibration is impatience. I'm doing this, doing that, I'm in charge, you know. And of course, fire constantly needs fuel. You see, you've got fire up there, and you've got earth, which is the most stationary of the four elements. Then you've got water, then you've got air, and then you've got fire. We need all of them. You see, air are ideas, lots of ideas. And water, of course, is the heart, is emotion, is a feeling, is psychic intuition, those sort of things. So imagine the round table in the next civilization, where I have air people, I have water people, I have mixes. You're pooling in all these different archetypes, and think of what we could create from that perspective, especially educationally. So there is so much to be excited about in this new dimension, but we mustn't dip into the fear, which is what the old paradigm wishes us to do, because that's how they can control us. And when we are able to talk like this and share our insights and our visions, we are released from the matrix. I mean, it's no different from Neo, you know, in the matrix, and he has to understand what it is and deprogram himself. And of course, Neo, spelled backwards, is one. We connect with the cosmos, with source. One thing how long have I got? What is the time? I don't want to, okay. So I've got 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. So let me speak, if I may, for a few more minutes, 5 more minutes, 10, and then we can do a 5 more minutes, and then I'll do a meditation. So I'm going to just share a little bit about my journey in the last 6 weeks briefly. As an astrologer, and also someone who is, I've got to be honest with you, reluctantly intuitive and psychic. I really don't consider myself that, but it's kind of forced upon me as one of my talents. I've kind of been waiting for 2020 for quite a few years, and I saw it astrologically. Many astrologers did. It doesn't make me unique by any stretch of the imagination. So in some ways, I've been waiting for this, but it hasn't made it any easier, because I've had to navigate my own personal space, my family, and my people I love most around me, and we all adapt and react in very different ways, of course. And that's how we grow as human beings, as souls. And so I've gone down rabbit holes. I've tried to explore new truths. Some of them have been on the fringe, and that's been quite, you know, tricky for people around me sometimes. But by doing that and coming out of it, I feel I do have a bigger understanding of what the cave was, you see, the propaganda. It doesn't mean I've got it all right, but I'm on that journey of trying to put the jigsaw puzzle together. So what I want to quickly share with you is I welcome you all to do your own research and use your intuition and go down these holes and explore, but don't stay down them too long. And the way to balance it is that wonderful ancient Hawaiian practice. I don't know whether any of you know that lovely practice from Hawaii. It's called Hooponopono. And I've only come across it relatively recently, and I know many Americans are very familiar with this, but it's 4 beautiful tenets. And you say, I'm sorry, and then you say, please forgive me, and then you say, thank you, and then you say, I love you. And I think the whole point of this is the outer reflection of what happens changes on the inside when you are with someone, maybe someone whom you love, but has a very different opinion. Let's say, for example, someone is a bleeding heart liberal and the other person is a diehard libertarian. Both could be very, very beautiful depending on their vibration. But we have been forced through the political language of today to create animosity, because when we're divided, we are controlled. It's very important that when we are divided, we are controlled. Now, I am a student of politics, so there's this part of me that is very fascinated with this. And of course, I'm in the spiritual arts, so I have to do this dance, which sometimes is not easy for me, and I have to rely on my teachers to navigate me, because I sometimes go off a little bit too far with my fire. But I think when we look at someone who we don't like, we often project our own anger onto that person. Think politically. We all have someone. Some people have Trump derangement syndrome. Some people think Mrs. Clinton is the devil. It doesn't matter. The point is we have to forgive, because when we grow like that, that's when we can get into the next dimension. Because by saying I'm sorry for projecting my dislike of what you've done and trying to forgive them, it's not to excuse them, but it's not for me to judge. So we go down the rabbit hole, we learn what we might consider truth, but then we pull back and we have a spiritual cleansing moment and we heal on the inside. Radical forgiveness, you see, the vibration is very high when we forgive. The whole body releases toxins, and that's how we keep our frequency high. And that's why people who do forgive live longer. I mean, obviously not always. Some people have a karmic contract to die to save other people. There are always exceptions to this. But most people who live in the vibration of forgiveness and I love you, which is really so fundamental, because I love you is why we come to this planet. I believe we come to this planet to experience love in multiple forms. And if we're conscious of that and we live through the paradigm of love, then the world evolves. And before we know it, we are in a different dimension, because that vibration then connects to the plants. We're connected again to the animals. I mean, think of all the animals in the shelters. They've all been taken inside by humans recently. We're connecting back to the animals. This is super exciting. So that was just the last thing I wanted to share with you, because we've got 5 minutes left. And I would love now, after all this intellectual, talking, I would like to try to share the sound of one of my Tibetan Bhutanese bowls, and for us to shut our eyes now. And I'd like us all to try and go into our inner space, taking deep breaths in. If we're sitting, please keep the spine as straight as possible. If our feet are touching the floor, which is great, I want you to imagine you're bringing Gaia, the earth energy, up into your whole body. And I would like everyone to start to breathe at least 5 seconds in, maybe 7. Through the nose in, and out through the mouth slowly, creating a nice exchange, a cycle. In, bringing up the energy from the earth, from Mother Earth, from Gaia, through our feet, up through our organs. Breathe the energy in to the pineal gland, which is the middle eye or the third eye. Part of the practice for all of us is to reawaken our pineal gland. The pineal gland, the ancient Egyptians knew about it. The great Greek mystics knew about it. All the mystics from the Himalayas and Peru and ancient old cultures know about it. It it's what gives us insight. We have our eyes shut, and yet the more we listen to it and decalcify it, the more it tells us truths. When we listen to someone speak their truth, we can witness it. And if we listen to someone who speaks clever words, but our intuition tells us that person isn't speaking truth, then we can clock it. We can just acknowledge that quietly, privately. We can remain self-sovereign, and that's part of journeying out of the cave. So when we're told stuff which doesn't feel right, that is our right, that is our self-sovereignty, to use the middle eye for truth, for connection. Take the deep breath in again. Take it up to the crown and connect it to cosmos, to the stars, to the planets, to your ancestors, to God, to Christ, to Buddha. It doesn't matter. These are all different labels. Christ consciousness, in my mind, in some ways is connected to Neptune, unconditional love. It's a sense of as above, so below, which is what the cross means symbolically. The Christ archetype is just about as above, so below. The metaphysical intersecting with the physical. The immaterial connecting the material realm. That's very beautiful. These great mystics of the past, when you really go to source, they all speak of the same truth. But our souls come from without, and they come here to earth to incarnate, to explore, to be free, through free will to learn and to love. So I'd like to end with that. This is a prayer for love and for our connection and our beauty to experience it together individually and collectively. Amen.